Hey everybody, welcome to this week's Prophecy Update. As always, it's our desire to bring the events that are happening in the world from a biblical perspective and also a prophetic perspective. So thanks for joining us this week. What we want to talk about is a recent video that's been circulating around on Twitter and a lot of memes and stuff like that, and it's caught people's attention. But it was a clip of Klaus Schwab, the evil Klaus Schwab, as you know, of the World Economic Forum, interviewing Sergey Brin at the World Economic Forum back in 2017. And so Klaus was interviewing Sergey, and they were talking about certain things, and they were talking about AI. And they were talking about the advent of AI. It might eliminate the need for elections. And that caught a lot of people's attention. And this has been circulating all through society and on Twitter and different things like that. So I thought I would talk about that and discuss the implications of that statement and what was said, and look towards the future and what does this mean for all of us, because it really is a threat. AI is a threat to elections and having fair elections, and what does that mean for those of us who live in democracies, or at least in America, we're in a what we call a constitutional republic. But again, we vote. You know, it's the concept of voting and not just having the elites rule over us. What does that mean that when these technocrats like Klaus Schwab or these AI developers talk about, hey, in the future, there won't really be a need for elections anymore? Whoa, what does that mean? And what are the prophetic implications? So that's what we're gonna look at today. Okay, so like I mentioned, this is back in 2017. Klaus Schwab is interviewing Sergey Brin. And if you don't know who Sergey Brin is, he's the co-founding guy with Larry Page of Google. Okay, so it was him and Larry Page that founded Google. So, you know, technocrat guy, okay? And anyway, he's also, was, I should say, the president of Google parent company, Alphabet Incorporated. And I think he stepped down somewhere back in 2019. Anywho, when they were doing this interview, Klaus said some very disturbing things of anyone that lives in a society where we vote. And I think it should concern all of us about elections and about AI, and if there's the possibility of ever having a fair election in the future. But anyway, Klaus Schwab, the evil guy that he is, says that, you know, hey, technology will be so advanced that it might eliminate the need for elections. And that caught everybody by surprise, that, you know, when he said this, and that's why this has caught wind lately. So let me play the video. You watch it. Watch Klaus Schwab say this about voting, then we'll come back, okay?
Can you imagine that in 10 years when we are sitting here, we have an implant in our brains, and I can immediately feel, because you all will have implants, and we measure your brain waves, and I can immediately tell you how the people react, or I can feel how the people react to your answers. Is it imaginable?
I think that is imaginable. I think I think, you know, you can imagine that. You can imagine, well, you're going to be sort of transplanted into, you know, the internet, so to speak, to live forever in a digital realm. You know, you can imagine that, you know, you just in your biological incarnation are going to live to be some, you know, very long age. I think it is almost impossible to predict. And in fact, the evolution of technology might be inherently chaotic. I mean, it could have been the case a couple hundred years back if it so happened that, you know, electricity evolved a little bit faster compared to internal combustion, that we all would have been driving electric cars today, and then somebody would have a newfangled internal combustion thing that would be like, whoa, that's kind of weird. But history happened to go one way. Maybe there are fundamental inherent reasons for that. But I think when you ask these kinds of questions about the future, what does it mean to be human in the future? What does it mean to be an individual versus society? Kind of where are we going in the long term? I mean, these are deep and powerful and fundamental philosophical questions, but I don't know that we are equipped to answer them.
I think it's premature because we don't know yet how the technology will look like. But one fear which I have heard is that technology now is, and digital technologies mainly have an analytical power. Now we go into a predictive power, and we have seen the first examples, and your company very much involved into it. But then the next step could be to go into a prescriptive mode, which means you do not even have to have elections anymore because you can already predict, and afterwards you can say, why do we need elections? Because we know what the result will be. Can you imagine such a world?
Well, you might then further ask, well, why do we need to have, elected leaders at all? Because you might as well have all the decisions made.
So it's pretty mind-blowing when you hear him talk like that, and you hear Sergey talk like that. And let's kind of unpack that a little bit. Okay, so he says that digital technologies mainly have an analytical power, he talks about, that, and now with this digital technology, and referring to AI, that we're going to go next. The next step is it has predictive power, he says, right? Predictive power. And the idea is that AI with quantum computing can access all these data points and bring them to bear and then be able to predict in an election, he says. And then he creepily says, well, the next step we're going to go into is a prescriptive mode. Okay, prescriptive, right? Prescriptive means I'm prescribing something, okay? I'm going to tell you something, and I'm giving you a prescription for medication to take. I'm going to tell you what to do. That's dangerous when he says that. You're going, what do you mean that the digital technologies, the AI or whatever, is going to go into a prescriptive mode? What do you mean? Well, here's the other thing that you have to understand. In order for AI to be prescriptive in telling people what to do, okay, that coincides with their whole plans for humanity for the future, about having this merging of biology and technology, as Klaus Schwab's The Fourth Industrial Revolution, where you put the two together. And really what it's about is carrying technology in our body that tells them, how you and I are thinking and feeling and seeing and in our brains and whatnot. And so as you can imagine, the evil involved in this, that, okay, we want to merge technology with humans, and then with the AI collecting all that data, the AI then can tell them what you and I are thinking, and or basically maybe it would prescribe how to think properly, right? Their version of reality. And then that's why we wouldn't need elections, is the theory, is that, well, the AI would be able to predict already, so we don't need elections, we don't need people putting in ballots, because the AI could predict and with very good accuracy what people want. And you can see the whole problem in all this, right? That well, whoever's designing the AI basically and putting in the algorithms and telling the AI what to do and what outcomes it wants, well, you can definitely see how it would be prescriptive to people and basically push out propaganda. And of course people would say, well, I'm going to go with what they're telling me or what I see, and that this is the better candidate and this is the bad candidate. And so of course you can totally manipulate people through propaganda with digital technology, AI, and then they don't even have to vote because you already know in their brain what they're thinking. Well, they want to vote for the candidate we propagandized for. So it's so evil. But this is basically what the guy's talking about. And like I've always said to you guys, early on in my understanding of the Antichrist, the one world government, all that stuff, we looked at it as them being able to control people from the outside, and that was clear to us. 25 years ago when we were studying this, or 30 years ago when I was studying this. But now that I'm 50 years old, and I see the technology advances that we have, I now have to say this. It's not only that they're going to control people from the outside, they're going to control people from the inside. I mean, just this last year, like we talked about before, in January at the Davos meeting, they said, one of the speakers, it was a lady, and I can't remember off the top of my head, who was speaking at Davos, said, look, we already have the ability to put like a Bluetooth device on people to figure out what they're thinking. And the Bluetooth device, the artificial intelligence, is able to actually see images of what people are thinking about. It's actually able to see their codes and see if they're daydreaming or not. And they said, this is going to be great. We're going to harness this power for employers, because then it will increase production, because employers will use this for employees. So like if they're daydreaming, the AI will tell the employer, hey, that guy was daydreaming for an hour. And then they say the capabilities of the AI is that the AI can actually see the images of what the guy's daydreaming or whatever. That's pretty scary that technology exists, but it shows you, oh, no wonder they want to be able to put this into our bodies to some degree, whether that's a neural implant in the brain, a chip, or whatever. They want to be able to use artificial intelligence in collecting this data and then prescribing things, and then in this case, prescribing propaganda that would cause somebody to want a certain candidate and say, well, the AI is saying that 75% of people want X, Y, and Z candidate, and so we're not even going to have election. We're just going to use the data that's collected and say, call it good. It's Joe Blow here. That's the candidate. And you can probably imagine that there will never probably ever be another conservative candidate ever again that will win. Okay? I want you to think about this, guys, about Donald Trump. Whether you're a fan or not, or it doesn't matter at this point, but what they're doing is the globalists do not want Donald Trump to run. So obviously now we're looking at the fourth indictment of Donald Trump. And we're really looking at in the United States as a kind of a banana republic at this point, where you put in jail your political enemies. We're at that stage now in America's politics and stuff, and it's really bad. It's descended into third world type of politics. This is what you see in third worlds, types of governments and stuff like that. Nonetheless, the globalists do not want anyone that would mess up their plans. So with a global elite, they have to have people in there that go along with the program, go along with the narrative, and not going to buck the system. And so with AI and them harnessing the power of AI and propagandizing it, just like they did, as we already saw, that the FBI and a lot of the CIA were in bed with the media corporations and the social medias, and basically in the last election, basically telling, giving false information or withholding information, not disclosing information, and that all has impacts on elections. And then forget about even the whole idea of the cheating that went on with the ballot harvesting and the Dominion things that they have never fixed, and that's a problem. So we're looking like this in the West of never having really a fair election again. But now with harnessing AI power and quantum computing and the whole digital aspects of this, you really can see the projection in the future where they would basically eliminate elections. And basically, even if they had one, it's a joke. It's fake. It's not real. People would go through the motions, but the digital monster that they have created would already spit out the outcome that they want. And so, as you can see, those of you who are not in America, This is really what this has been about for the last few years, with Trump and Biden and the Clintons and all this other stuff that's going on politically, and how really the globalist elite do not want anyone messing up their plans. And they're going to make sure in the next election that doesn't happen again. And so you're going to see a massive, wide-scale cheating and probably using AI. But again, as Bible students, we have to understand that this is happening. But what can we do about it, and how are we going to respond? Back to the video that you guys watched. Did you notice that when Bren is talking, that he theorizes about the future of humanity, and he's like, what does it mean in the future to be an individual or a collective society? And when you look at those words, you have to understand that's coming from a leftist, globalist, satanic, Luciferian mindset. What do you mean? Well, in the Bible, the thrust is obviously the individual responsibility. That society is created, but it rests upon the responsibility of the individual. So like in America, the big deal is individual responsibility, individualism, okay? That it's important that the individual's rights are upheld and heard and protected, okay? But then when he mentions collective society, those are communistic terms. Those are Marxist terms. Those are socialistic terms. Collective, collective, collective. And when you hear that term, it should snap into mind that, oh, they want collective society, not individual. So that's what America's built on, is an individual rights versus collective. Now, when you get into the collective, you'll hear them say things like, well, the person, the individual, has to sacrifice their rights for the collective good. And you've probably heard that many times. That is flat out Marxism. That's communism, socialism. But again, you're saying, was that just a political ideology? No. That is a Babylonian ideology. That is a satanic ideology. Because let me give you an example. With the Tower of Babel, the Tower of Babel was built with uniform bricks, right? That man-made uniform. They all look the same, right? And they're all interchangeable. If one breaks, you can interchange the brick and put another one in. Okay. When God wanted the patriarchs to make altars, they had to make the altars out of stone, and it was unhewn. So they couldn't chip away and make a perfect altar. They had to fit together the stones. And so the theme in the Bible is that humans are they're not collective society as bricks, but humans are individual stones that have all different shapes and sizes, and then you have to make them fit together. Okay, but everybody comes together, like for Israel or the church, in a collective body, but they retain their individual rights and individuality by the different shapes of the stones. Okay, so that's the theme. So when you go to Babylon, the theme is bricks, and they're all the same, and they're all cut out, and they're uniform. And it goes to a collective mindset of how the elites or Satan thinks about humans, that they're interchangeable, that they're not made in God's image, they're just these creatures of clay, and we need to mold them into our own shape and make them a nice utilitarian worker in our beehive, so to speak, or building the wall of Babylon, so to speak. That's collectiveness. And that's what this guy's talking about. And what you'll notice about all these elites is they talk like that. Collectivism. And so to them, in collectivism, this is where the depopulation mentality comes from. Well, it's good that the ones that are not fit for society need to sacrifice themselves, or we need to find a way to get rid of 70% of the population in a civilized way, they say, for the good of the earth or good of humanity or whatever. And that's this collective mentality. So when you hear the guy speak with Flausch, that's this mentality. So to understand this collective mentality as far as it pertains to votes and AI, is that the AI can determine what is in their minds, okay? The AI will determine, using the analytics, using the data, what is best for society based on who's putting the data points inside the AI. So basically, they're controlling the outcome of an election. So they use the AI, they pump their information into the AI. We want this candidate, we want this said and this not said, whatever. And the AI goes out and does that. Okay? So a lot of the technology out there is used by AI. So all the social media programs are AI, okay? And it can be used to manipulate people, and it did, and it will if they continue to allow this to happen. Now, we saw with Elon Musk buying Twitter that he's trying to stop what Twitter was doing, but Twitter was heavily involved until Elon Musk got involved and took over in keeping information away from people and not disclosing it, and then only giving one side of the story. Facebook has done this, YouTube has done this, Google has done this. They're all doing it, okay? Let's look about the definition of what Klaus Schwab was saying about the fourth industrial revolution, and how it's going to merge AI or digital technology with humans. And you can go right to the World Economic Forum website. Here's the article, and I want you to see the article right here in front of you. And this is what he says. He says, this fourth industrial revolution is, however, fundamentally different. It is characterized by a range of new technologies that are fusing, notice the word fusing, the physical, digital, and biological worlds. This is what Revelation 13 is talking about, right? You can't buy or sell without the mark. This is where it's projecting out to be, right? And you're seeing it, the groundwork right now. And he goes on, impacting all disciplines, economies, of course, the economies, because you can't buy and sell, right? And industries, that's the merchants of the world, the corporations, and even challenging ideas about what it means to be human, right? Because they want to do a transhuman. They want to make basically cyborgs out of us, and that we have digital things inside of us so they can track and trace and manage, right? And he goes on and says the world has the potential to connect billions more people to digital networks, and they have to do that to control everybody, dramatically improve the efficiency of organizations, and even manage assets in ways that can help regenerate the natural environment, potentially undoing the damage of previous industrial revolutions. Well, anyway, what he's basically saying is, hey, we're going to be able to control everybody on the planet if we hook them up to this digital system, and we're going to do it in their bodies, okay? That's what he was trying to say. And so this is why we understand that this is not just, well, Klaus is only just theorizing. Could you imagine in the future having no elections? Can you imagine such a thing? No. When he says imagine, it means they're already thinking about doing it. They're not playing with the thought. They want this. Klaus Schwab and the rest of these global elites do not want us serfs voting. They do not want us making any impact into elections. They want to rule the world, and they're doing everything they can to prevent us from having any voice whatsoever. They hate free speech. They hate freedom of religion, that's for sure. And they hate voting. They hate the fact that we can vote people out. They hate that the commoner can cast a vote, and if enough people cast a vote, we can get people out of office. They hate that. That messes up their plans. That's what the whole Donald Trump thing was about. That's what all of the making up January 6th, making it a big deal, was all about. This is why they're indicting Donald Trump 4 times. They can't have anyone in the way. And their solution to this is AI. It's a digitalization of propagandizing, but then using technology to be implanted in people to sway them to a certain degree. And one of the things you have to realize about what Klaus Schwab and the rest of these global elites want is they want to depopulate the planet. That's a given, okay? So a lot of what they do is about decreasing the human population on the planet through systematic murder, basically. But the other thing they want to do is transhumanism, okay? And we've talked about this before, but transhumanism basically is the belief that human beings can be enhanced by technology, by genetic engineering, like CRISPR or whatever, and that information technology that's with us today can be bioengineered, and as a result, create humans with kind of enhanced capabilities or augmented capabilities with them. And we call this in science fiction cyborgs, or like X-Men, or the concept of a superhero that has been genetically engineered and now he's a superhero, or like Spider-Man, he's genetically engineered because he got bit by a spider and now he's got all these wonderful things. And that's really their concept of where it's coming from, of that the technology will make a human being better. And it comes out of an evolutionary mindset. They all believe in evolution because they're God haters, so they go with evolution. But instead of allowing, in their minds, biological evolution, they want to advance humans through technological evolution, if that makes sense, and using technology to advance humans. But here's the thing, they're playing God. That's what really the elites think. They think they're gods. That they can go in and mess with DNA with CRISPR and cut out parts of DNA and say, well, we want the Superman, we want a super this or whatever, and a mass. It's kind of like a eugenics program on steroids with, the way they want to bioengineer things. But that's what it is. That's what it's about. And so, in essence, the goal is to implant this stuff in your body. It's wearable, implantable. And once it's on our bodies, they believe it will expedite the process and make things easier for humans to get to humans 2.0 or transhumanism or cyborgs or whatever you want to call it. And anyway, that's kind of their mindset. But go back to the video, and he's saying, can you imagine in 10 years an implant into your brains, and we can measure our brain waves, and I can immediately tell you how people are going to react when he talks about that. Hey, I want to tell you something. It's not 10 years away. Like, they're cooking this up now. They want to implement this ASAP, as soon as possible. They're not going to wait 10 years. They want to pop the clutch on this stuff. And the digital technology that we have in the bioengineering is allowing them to do such a thing. And then, as you saw, why do we need to have elections? Because we know what the results could be. Can you imagine such a world? And I want to say, yeah, I can imagine such a world because it's predicted in Scripture. It's called totalitarianism. We've seen it in history, but we're moving into the ultimate totalitarianism, where no one's going to be able to vote for the Antichrist. Hey, do you want to vote for the Antichrist? The dude's just going to take power. And what about these 10 kings that pop up? We'll talk about that in a bit. There's no voting in that. We're moving into global dictatorship, global tyranny, where no one on the planet has a vote. That's the idea. That's the goal, right? It's total totalitarianism. Now, if we turn to the scriptures, again, Daniel, the book of Revelation, bring this all to light. We already know one world government's coming. But look, the one world government is not going to be voted on. You have to understand that. It's not something that they know you and I will vote for. They know the masses of people around the world are not going to vote for this. So it has to be forced on them, which is exactly what the scriptures indicate. That it's not a voting thing, it's forced. Daniel chapter 2, look at verse 40 on the screen here. And the fourth kingdom shall be as strong as iron, inasmuch as iron breaks in pieces and shatters everything. And like iron that crushes, the kingdom will break in pieces and crush all the others. Now, what is this? It is telling you that this kingdom, this fourth kingdom, which started in Jesus' day and will end at the second coming, one day goes through a change and turns into a global kingdom. Okay? So what we see with the fourth kingdom, the beast kingdom in Scripture, there's actually 5 phases to it. There's a united phase, which was Rome, which we saw with Jesus' day, right? Then there's the 2-phase kingdom, which when Rome split and went into 2 phases, one's on Western Europe, the other one's centered in Russia, and that stays today. And then the third stage is global government, which we're getting ready to go into. And then after that, you have a 10-king stage, and then you have an Antichrist stage. So there's 5 stages in the fourth kingdom, according to Daniel 2, Daniel 7, and Revelation 13. Okay, But what am I getting at? It's forced. It crushes, it says. It shatters everything. It's not like people say, hey, come on, bring it in. No, it has to force its way in. Daniel chapter 7, notice the forcing. After this, I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, exceedingly strong. It had huge iron teeth. It was devouring, breaking in pieces and trampling the residue with its feet. And it was different from all the other beasts that were before, and it had 10 horns. So again, I'm not going to go over all the detail here. What I'm trying to emphasize is the forcing. It's strong, it devours, it tramples. That's a forcing, is what Daniel's trying to say. Then you go to Revelation 13, the 10 horns. Again, we know that this will spring out of the global government is 10 world leaders over 10 global regions, not necessarily centered in Europe, but over the entire globe. That's what Daniel's trying to say. And then in Revelation, it's reiterated by John. The 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings who have received no kingdom as yet, but have received authority for 1 hour as kings with the beast. Okay, they receive authority for 1 hour, so basically a short time period with the beast. But the receiving of authority is not coming from voting. Okay, it's not coming from you and I casting a vote of whether we want to have a regional government, whether we want to have a North American Union. It's not. It is a forced situation. Their authority has been allowed by God. Obviously, God is in control of all this, but that authority then is coming from Satan, who is the God of this world. That's where they receive their authority, not from us voting for them. Okay? And these are of one mind, and they will basically give their power and authority to the beast, the Antichrist eventually at the midpoint of the tribulation, and they will make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb will overcome them, for he is Lord of Lords and King of Kings, and thank God for that he destroys it all when Messiah comes back at the second coming. Okay, so Scripture is telling you that that's where it goes. Now, you and I won't be here for the tribulation. We know that, thank God. But in the setup, if we know that's the destination, we know that's the end goal, what are we looking for prophetically? We're looking for the path that way. We're looking for the projection. We're looking for the pattern. So in understanding prophecy from a Hebraic standing, you're looking for pattern. What's the pattern? And the pattern, as you can see, is they want to eliminate elections because they're going to rule tyrannically eventually with no elections. They're just going to assume power. That's how it's going to be. And it's going to be a global dictatorship, basically. Now, let's talk about the mentality a little bit of these types of people. The mentality of Klaus Schwab, the mentality of all these global elites, okay? They believe that they're the smart ones, that they're the godlike ones, that they need to make all the decisions. In fact, you and I are the stupid ones. The masses of humanity don't know anything. They're just ignorant, hayseed idiots, okay? And they despise us. I mean, remember Hillary Clinton called people all kinds of names, and remember she was running for presidency, the deplorables, and you hear comments like that. That's really how they think about people. They hate the peons. They hate the serfs, because in their minds they're the elite. They're the smart ones. Okay. So anyway, they don't want people like you and I voting. They think we're just stupid rubes. Country bumpkins that don't know anything. That's really how they think about us. It's a very elitist mentality. And so when you and I vote, that impedes what these people are wanting to do. Now, this is interesting when you look at political science and you study like Plato's Republic. Plato revealed a lot of this in his Republic. And you can almost see where these elites get their mentality. Like Plato, when he wrote Plato's Republic, he was writing it, and he was basically saying this, that the average person is just too dumb or uninformed or uneducated to make any good decisions. And so what Plato theorized is that you had to have an elite ruling class, that he called the philosopher kings, or the guardians is another term he would use for them. But really what it was true he was referring to is a master class, an elitist class that was above everyone else. And he had basically 3 classes in his republic. But anyway, in that mindset, he called these people, well, the guardians of society, the ruling class were the philosophers, where they were the ones that were experts in thinking. And this is the interesting thing. Today, we're having a problem with people saying, well, you can't weigh in on anything because you're not an expert. And so just because I'm a doctor, I can't weigh in on saying, well, I've looked at the facts and evidence and this doesn't match up. I don't need to be a doctor to have any common sense to say that's wrong, or whatever it might be. Well, you're not an expert. You're not an expert. Who gave you an expert? So if someone makes some type of statement in education or whatever, and it's off the chart, leftist, talking about grooming kids or something, and then you come out there and say, that's the stupidest, most immoral decision you could possibly make, is to expose children to grooming of LGBT and transgender. And they're gonna say, well, who are you? You're not an education expert. And you're like, I don't need to be an education expert. I just have common sense and I have some morality. That's what I have. But see, this is the way it's going. And I don't know if they're playing their parts or they've read Plato's Republic. I'm probably sure they have, but they really probably believe Plato, that there is these groups of intellectuals and they're so smart. I mean, even Klaus Schwab, think about this, is playing out Plato's mentality that there is an elite class. And we call them the World Economic Forum people that have all been trained under Klaus Schwab. He brings them over and trains them. And they're future globalists, or whatever he calls them, these young globalists. And so he even has that mentality, because Plato even said that, we need to make sure we get the children away from their parents, and that the state would run the children. And these children that are educated by the state, then we would know if they're elite, they have the right mentality to be an elite, and then we'd sift them off and teach them to be, these philosopher kings or guardians. I mean, it's totally, when you look at the public school system, that's what they're doing, right? That's what they're trying to do, indoctrinate people to have this kind of mentality. Well, anyway, this is what they're doing. They really believe there's an elite class that needs to rule, and all of us are just a bunch of dummies, and they don't want elections. They don't want that. And so this is what we're seeing, right? And so the future projection is they're moving away from democracy. Now, when I talk about democracy, I'm not talking about mob rule at 51%. I'm talking about the ability for the average person to vote. And of course, in the United States, we have a democracy that's called a constitutional republic, where we have representatives and then we can vote. They want to eliminate that. I think it's important to understand that we may never see another fair election again. I think it's fair to say that. Now, they might go through the motions, but the funny thing is, none of them are ever scared. We have a candidate the last time that sat in his basement and did no campaigning whatsoever, and they were not afraid to lose. Okay? And I think that this is going to continue to happen, and there's going to be massive cheating. They're going to use AIs for algorithms, for all kinds of weird stuff, and I don't really believe we're going to see another fair election again. I just don't. That doesn't mean just to throw up your hands and not vote. I think what you have to realize is if they're going to cheat, you have to vote, because they can't cheat that's so obvious that, you can't be like 1,000,000 votes to 1 or something like that. If you notice they're cheating, that they're cheating just a little bit enough to win, okay? That's what they have to do. They have to cheat just enough to win. They don't have to do this, 1,000,000 votes to 1. And so this is incumbent upon all of us that if they're going to cheat, if they're going to use AI, if they're going to do any of this stuff that Klaus Schwab is talking about, you have to vote. Because too many people, too many Christians have thrown up their hands and surrendered and said, I'm not going to vote. And basically, they only have to cheat a little bit and win. You have to vote enough to where the cheating can't outdo how many people voted. That's how you have to think about in those terms. So this is not a call of inaction. This is a call to action. You have to vote. Everyone has to vote. And the problem is, most Christians, will do their duty, but there's a significant portion of Christians that just won't vote. And it's like, dude, what's wrong with you? Hey, we know we're not running up, a pastor to be the president of the United States, but let's pick the lesser of the two evils and go with it, because what would you rather have? A faster train off the cliff or a slower train off the cliff? That's barely what you're doing. You're just basically, to borrow Jan Markell's term, delaying the decay. That's really what you're doing. And that's what this is all about. But man, if you don't vote, then the AI is just going to completely give enough votes enough to win. And you not voting or me not voting gives them the advantage. So you have to vote. You have to vote so much that the AI can't outdo it in its cheating mechanisms. So anyway, that's one thing. Second thing to think about is this. Daniel, when he was given all these visions about all these different empires that would basically be the times of the Gentiles, where basically Jerusalem and the Temple Mount would be trampled underfoot by the Gentiles, right? Until the second coming. That could pretty much bring into depression that this is what's going to happen to Israel, okay? So what did he say during one of these episodes, especially when he was explaining this to Nebuchadnezzar? Daniel says something very interesting, I think applies to all of us right now. That even despite all these four empires, they're going to rule over Israel until the second coming, even to this day. He says this, verse 19, and this is in chapter 2 of Daniel. During the night, the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a vision, and he blessed the God of heaven and declared, notice what he says, "Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and power belong to him." Now again, wisdom and power in relationship to what he's seen with these empires ruling over Israel. But notice in verse 21 what he says. He changes the times and seasons. He removes kings and establishes them. There we go. So here's the deal. The good news is on the ground, these people may think they're trying to get think and look and perceive that they're getting away with things. But the scriptures are saying it's God who removes kings and establishes kings. It's not them. Now, does God take in our vote, our free will? Of course he does. Absolutely he does. He takes that. So yeah, you have to play your part. So God puts that into his plan about voting and about praying, and he factors praying and voting and the free will action of his creatures into his plans. And so that's why you do have to pray and you do have to vote, all that stuff. Okay, you just can't check out. But at the end of the day, you and I have the luxury of being able to stand back and say, hey, you know what? They can cheat all they want. They can put their little guys in the places that they want. But at the end, God's going to have in there who he wants and who he doesn't want. Now, the bad news about this is if God allows wicked kings, then it's a sign that God's judging that nation, okay? It's giving the nation what it wants, okay? It's giving the people and the society of that nation what it deserves. Not so much you and I, because we're on God's team, but to the rest of the people that are anti-God, he's given them exactly what they want. And with the way things are going, the bigger idea is not just beyond whatever country you live in, Canada, Mexico, America, Europe or whatever. The bigger plan is this is all heading in one direction. Whether you're in Sweden, whether you're in Australia and New Zealand, South Africa, what part of the world you're in, it's all going this direction. And the direction is global government, no voting, tyrannical control, ultimately landing in the hands of the Antichrist. And so that's what you have to come to grips with. And if you come to grips with it, then you can handle things a lot better. So it's not a call to inaction. It's not a call to surrender. It's a call that we got to do our job. We have to outvote the AI if they're planning on cheating. You have to do that. And so at the end of the day, we'll let the chips fall where they may. We'll do our part. We'll do our obedience, right? And be salt and light and vote and do whatever we need to do. And at the end, we'll leave the rest to God. And we'll see what he decides he wants to do in the end. So we'll go with that, okay? Hey, a couple things before we leave. Make sure you have our new app on your phone, your iPad, your computer, or whatever you need to do. Download that app, get that, and you'll have the latest updates, the latest sermons, the latest prophecy updates, or whatever we're uploading. And it's a useful tool. It's an easy tool, but just make sure you got that one. Also, get on our text alert system. Follow this link here. Put your name, your phone number in there. You won't get anything in response back, but when we put out alerts and, hey, we're going to be doing this, we're going to be doing that, you'll get that text alert, okay? So you can make sure you're on that. And the other thing I wanted to mention is look at our events page on our website, and it'll tell you where we're going to be in the future, at different conferences and stuff like that. I would love to meet you. It's neat to be able to get out there and see you guys that watch us online and then get to meet you face to face. It's a blessing to do that. And so look at where we're going to be. We're going to head to Europe in the fall, and we're going to be at the Prophecy Watchers Conference in October. And hopefully we can see a lot of people there. I'd like to see a lot of the remnant out there in Europe. We're going to be in Ireland, Scotland, and then Italy. So if you're in those areas, we'd like to see you. Come on out, say hello. And then lastly, pray for us and continue to lift us up, because we're under a lot of spiritual attack, because to say the things we're saying brings a lot of heat on us, obviously. And then lastly, and if the Lord puts it on your heart to help us financially, we could use it. We're trying to get the school started, and I don't know if it's going to go this year, but we're still working on it. We've had a lot of interruptions, but we need money for the school. We need money for our church and for our online ministry to be able to continue to do this. So if the Lord puts it on your heart to help us financially, man, that's awesome. If and many of you have already done that, and we appreciate it. Every penny makes a difference. So thank you guys. So anyway, got to get running, but remember what the Lord said. When you see these things begin to happen, look up, lift up your heads, for your redemption draws near. God bless you. We'll see you next time.